So guys, Tripe+Drisheen, which of you is Tripe and which of you is Drisheen? That's my fatuous opening question. For those who don't know, Tripe+Drisheen is the archetypal Cork dish. It's effectively the innards of a cow's stomach, is it? Have either of you tasted Tripe+Drisheen?
I've actually tried eating Tripe+Drisheen once just for the purposes of experimentation, and I won't be going back there. But as we often say to people, you don't have to eat it, you just read it, because we do get a lot of vegetarians going, oh, I hate your name. But we were just trying to go for something. Well, actually, JJ, you explain that because you're the one who chose that name, I guess.
I should admit I've never had Tripe+Drisheen, like any person up in Cork, you'd be familiar with it. But no, I think I just wanted to nail a kind of a Cork, a title that people, or a phrase that people in Cork would be familiar with. And like when we and Ellie were kind of doing this in the first few months and we were telling people we're from Tripe+Drisheen, I'm sure there was kind of a lot of quizzical, like, what is that? And even like other people I've met outside of Cork, you know, they're like, there's a bit of a stumbling block with it. But it's taken off. And yeah, we just wanted to make it local. Or I did, and that's how I didn't put too much thought into it really.
Well, so the dish is cow's innards. That's what Tripe+Drisheen is. But Tripe+Drisheen in your formulation of it is a means for. So what I'll do is maybe get a bit of an idea of both of your backgrounds to coming to this. But it's a way to do independent long form journalism, and I believe there's a model that this is based on. And I mean, I'm loving it. It's because there's so much in life now these days that's shortened, and it's small little sound bites and small little bits. But and even actually these sorts of Zoom chats are allowing me to kind of go deeper on a conversation and let anyone who wishes to come in and enjoy the because you really get to the heart. You can get more to the heart of a matter in a longer form than I need 600 words on that, but the story is more than 600 words. So give me all of that and take it however way you wish.
Ellie, do you want to start there?
Okay. Well, will I say a little bit about myself and then, yeah, okay. All right. So, well, I'm a freelance journalist. I've been working in Cork for quite a long time. I actually had a food business before that. I started the Natural Foods Bakery, which is down in Blackrock with my sister. And I left after 10 years, but I still need the dough. That's my joke. Hey. So I went back to college, and as a mature student, and I knew that I really wanted to. I'm about people, and I knew that I wanted to interview people, and did a undergraduate degree, followed it up with an MA in journalism and new media at CIT. And by then I was already freelancing. So, you'd see my stuff a fair amount in the Examiner and the Echo, little dribs and drabs other places as well. And then I suppose when I met JJ, I was reaching the stage. I mean, I'm essentially a features writer. I'm a long form person. I've always been very frustrated by working news where you get given like 350 words to try and tell a story. So I was really ready to try and be doing something independent on the side myself, where you get to really explode a story and really come at it from a lot of different angles. And then I met JJ, and JJ was just after moving back from Japan. Do you want to take up from your end there, JJ?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ellie. So as Ellie said, I came back from Japan just about this time last summer, and I'd been in Japan for about 10 years. And we had planned in 2019 to move back with my family, and I worked there in university and reporting a lot like Ellie. Features are my mainstay, and it's what I enjoy most in journalism or working on. And when I came back, it wasn't ideal for anybody really, that time of the year, and kind of finding work was hard, and I was freelancing and kind of temping places. And it's just a bit of frustration from my own part about like what that Ellie spoke about, it's if you get, like, freelancing is a hustle at the best of times. And if you get anything in, there is that, you're constrained by space. Like we still have that kind of, the newspaper model, there's still a bit of a kind of, it's still online as well, in that you need that 500, 600 words that you spoke about. And I had time because I wasn't working very much. And I thought, I like, one of the reasons I came back to live in Ireland, in Cork, I'm from here, was to work in journalism. And there's always stories, and like Ellie will say the same thing to you, no matter where you are in life, or you'll always find that there's stories to report. So we tackled, the first one we did out the bat was on dereliction, because if you walk around town or if you spend any little bit of time on social media, I think anywhere in Ireland, you'll notice that like we have a serious problem with dereliction. So I said, instead of like, why do we have this problem? So yeah, I mean, journalism is a lot about just talking to people, interviewing and reporting. So that's how it started. And when we launched in February, we just put up that article and followed it up. Then we did 2-part series on dereliction and vacancy in the city. And yeah, Ellie was on board then straight away from that. And to be honest, we go with like one long form piece every week, and that can go anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 words. But I wouldn't have been able to keep up that pace of putting that out every week, because we were essentially doing it for free, and we are still to a certain degree. But
I'm just going to interrupt you there, JJ, because I have a really big confession to make, which was that when we first started talking about doing a media project together, I wanted to do print. I'm a real old school kind of person, and I was like, we're going to have a really classy, it's going to be like the new Corker, it's going to be like a New Yorker style magazine for Cork, weekly, you know, nice slow turnaround, nice long articles, quality stuff. And JJ was saying there's this thing called Substack, you know, and it's amazing. And so the Substack format is that, you know, I mean, obviously, Dave, you know yourself because I see you on our email list, but the format there is that people receive it. It basically comes into your email inbox. So the article, it's like you open your email and the article is right there for you. So the title of the email is the headline, and then the story is the body of your email. So I hate being spammed with stuff, and I hate having a full email inbox because I get so much stuff with so many attachments. And JJ was going, oh, we should try this amazing Substack thing. And I was going, people would hate that. Like, no way. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants bloody more information into their inbox. Don't be ridiculous. And then JJ just fired ahead and put out the first one. And then I was going, Jesus, I'm seeing this getting shared around the place. This is actually incredible. So then once that happened, then I apologized profusely and went, I'm really, really wrong here. You're totally right. And then because the Substack model, we are the only, as far as we know, local news Substack in Ireland. There are some fantastic people using that platform for blog type things and in a variety of different ways. But we're really following a UK model because we've seen this explosion of specifically local news Substacks and journalists moving onto Substack in the UK. There's the Manchester Mill and the Sheffield Tribune. That would be two of them. And they are phenomenally successful. So I think that we're right at the crest of a wave. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of this in Ireland in the coming months.
Yeah, there's a couple of, well, there's a lot of interesting things in there, but I mean, just as you're talking, like, I would totally agree with you on the email. Like, it's death by email half the time. But yet actually I welcome that one because it's so different to other emails. It's like, this is there's going to be something actually juicy and rewarding in this. This has body, for want of a better word, if you know what I mean. And so I welcome that email. It doesn't feel like, oh, here's another like death by 1,000 email kind of cuts kind of thing. It feels different to the other emails. It feels like, oh, I want to click on this one because it's going to bring me down into something that's going to, I don't know, tease out an issue. You're right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the people I follow. Maybe it's Twitter. I don't know. But the dereliction one, isn't it Jude and Frank, I think, are doing so much good work as the Inish agency or in highlighting the dereliction all around. There's, parking. Like a lot of the things you've gone long form on are the ones that I'm equally like, you see that citizens or individuals are bothered by these things in their environment, where they live, in how life is around them, and they flag these things as things that they're bloody annoyed about. And there's that sort of feeling of like, maybe not, there feels like there's some attempt of bringing some power back to the individual to say, what's going on with this? Why can't we tackle this? I have an idea of how this could be different, and I'm putting it out into some sort of a space, and others are going, yeah, you're dead right. But how does that reach the corridors of power, or where does that disseminate out further? And it seems like your pieces touch on many of those things and then flesh them out in this kind of like, wow, there it is from top to bottom, the story. Like, the OPW and the various flood schemes that have been conducted, that are proposed to be conducted, and a lot of the background, the Arterial Drainage Act. And it just, so whatever way you've done it, you've been hitting, and the trees issue, I know that was more of a pass over to the vision of Cork for 2040. But there's just been a lot of things in there that have really been like, yeah, they're the things that I'm interested in when I go online. But it's that sort of connecting the individual citizen to, I don't know, like making that story come out in concertina fashion. Is there anything in there in that? Do you know what I'm sort of kind of getting out of that, or is that what you're very much trying to do?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a really good point. Yeah, I think that we you know, both of us, like, I know that in my own work, the reason that I started being a journalist is because I believe that there are voices all around us that don't get an equal share, that don't get heard very frequently. And they're normally the voices of ordinary people. I think that, and this is not a criticism meted at any particular publication or any particular journalist, but I think that in the past couple of years, we have seen the media super saturated in this country with the official line, the line coming from government departments. There's a tight circling of PR and very clever PR around every organization that you're trying to deal with now. It's very hard to gain access to people who are willing to be transparent and put their hands up and say, okay, well, listen, this is how we do things. And in the meantime, there's this huge amount of voices that are not getting heard. People who are in vulnerable situations, people who encounter the frustrations of living in the city and county all the time, and people on the ground who spot things, you know? I mean, like, like going back to the OPW story there, Dave, that you were mentioning, you know, like it was locals on the ground who said, like, when it comes to the, say, for example, the Bandon, which, by the way, I'm going to have another article on soon. When it comes to the Bandon River, it was locals who said, this is a ridiculous thing to do to this river. And then when they put in the giant fish pass that they've called the whale pass, that then malfunctioned and stopped the salmon migrating up the river, it was the locals who spotted the problem. So I just really believe that there's like community journalism has a lot of the solutions, and that if you go and listen to people, and if you can take time to tell those stories and go looking for those voices, that you're doing a good public service for people. And amazingly, a lot of very official types are on our mailing list. There are people in councils that get our stuff, you know.
And there's some of those stories that are now filtering into the mainstream press, maybe because the mainstream press sort of see like there's an appetite for this, or it's like someone has broken the ground and gone, well, this is why we're covering it, because it's out there. It is funny. There's a funny few things going on in all of this that's interesting. But also I think as well that like people feel so divorced from influencing their environment around them. I'm not sure they know how to connect anymore with how to affect change. And I think people try on Twitter, but like, so maybe like, because the real interest that people have is often local. Like, obviously we're interested in the national stories and the bigger things, and they're covered in that way, but you maybe don't know how you can affect those things. But you walk around and you look and you go, well, why is like that? And why can't we change that? It's clear what needs to be done there. How does someone else not see this? Where do you do that? So this form of independent long form journalism maybe is a way to bring that citizen voice out into a wider place and space.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like we're not like we haven't broken any new ground in terms of long form journalism. Like long reads have been around a while now. But I guess what me and Ellie have is we have a bit of time on our side. Like we don't have to hit a deadline every day. And like we can be working on a story for weeks. Like we know we have to turn out a long read. Between us, that is our model every Thursday. So we have another one coming tonight. But like we can plan ahead and work on a story, and we both know from working in traditional journalism as well. And like this isn't again a critique on any one journalist or publication, but like you're constantly hitting deadlines and constraints. And Ellie talked there about like the people you go to for sources. Like we do it all. Like I used to do all the time. You go to the person who'll give you an answer quick. But like what happens is you develop a pattern there, and you're just not talking to enough people. And like we're also very conscious. We use Twitter a lot, but like there's more people not on Twitter than there is on Twitter, you know. And like local journalism, I think, is really important. And you said it there a while ago. Local journalism, it matters to local people, you know. So like ideally, we'd love to have even more time on this, because like we've seen with the Manchester Mill, which was set up this time last year. Like they've just gone from Joshy set it up by himself, and now he's a team of maybe 3 or 4. So there is a real appetite out there. And with Substack, like you kind of said it yourself, you like getting this email. Like we aren't forcing anyone to sign up. like it's a free subscription model. So if you want it, it's like it's your own volition. You want this to come in, you know. So like it's a bit different to spam that way, where you're just getting this, I don't know, message from Revolut or wherever, and you just straight to bin. And what was the other thing that I can't remember that I was going to say there, but I will stop saying there something.
Well,
sorry, that's my train of thought.
Obviously your Japan story explains the Haruki Mikkel O'Donoghue, for anyone wondering.
So I asked my son, so because remember when they had to.
Do you have a Japanese son, or is he just taking a Japanese name?
No, he's the real deal. I have 2 boys. They're born in Japan, so we moved back here last summer.
Oh, magic!
Yeah,
and what
so
does Haruki mean in Japanese?
Just like well, it depends. You can, because you know with the Chinese characters, you can make it mean anything you want, depending on. So it has a million different meanings. But like you know the famous author.
You have to do a long form piece on that.
It's the same. Yeah, but like one of our first pieces in the first month or so was with a Japanese violin maker working here in Cork from Tokyo. So yeah, like we do a mix of like very issue-based reporting and then profiles. And we're trying to build more and more. Like there's just so much you can do, and we have the freedom to do that. Like, and I think Ellie would agree.
Exactly. Like, yeah, like, well, that's like in a way that actually kind of like maybe a bigger publication kind of can't really do, because it's just not its business model. It just doesn't work. Whereas you can actually laser focus on a thing and expand it out in a way. So it is. It feels like an exciting development. How, by the way, obviously it has to pay. You know, you've got lives to live and bills to pay. How does this work, or how are you hoping it will work?
So we had a discussion about this, remember, Ellie, because like a lot of the Substack journalist newsletters are nearly all subscription, where you subscribe, but you subscribe to be a member, so you're paying a donation every month. So we turned on subscriptions, paid subscriptions in June, was it, Ellie? Or maybe end of May, June. So for the first 4 to 5 months, everything was free. And then we had this, like, we obviously have mouths to feed as well. So when we turned on subscription, then we came up against the conundrum of, okay, so we knew some people would pay, but we knew that like we're still very small and not a lot of people know us, and we're still growing. But if we're writing a 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 word piece on like the what's happening in Bandon or in Blackpool or with like parking or anything, and if we're only giving it to paying members, then effectively we're just giving it to a very, very small bubble. So we decided we're going to keep everything, nearly everything, to be honest. About 95% of our stuff is it goes out to everybody, and it's also, you don't have to sign up. You can, like, we have a website, a Substack website, Tripe+Drisheen. You can click on there and read everything. But and then our members who have signed up and are paying, like, fair play to them, they're funding us to do these stories. Ellie, do you want to talk about that as well? Like about
we're reader supported model, Dave. So we don't ever, you will never see advertising or any type of pressure from any type of corporate interest whatsoever. We're real puritanical a-holes about that. So I do not want to go down some kind of route whereby you have these kind of tie-ins and you're running advertorials and that type of stuff. I detest that. I think it's really bad for the world. I think it's really bad for our environment. I think it's terrible for everything, and a very destructive way of looking at the world. So we've gone fully reader supported. We're really, really lucky. We have an incredible group of subscribers already. We have basically 3 rates at the moment. So some people are paying us €8 per month. That's brilliant. You really need to have a lot of them because you need a little bit of regular money coming in. And then we have a lot of people who sign up for, so there's a slight discount. So it's €80 for a year. So you're basically getting kind of 2 months free for that. And then we have this incredible group of founding members who can choose how much money they put in, and they've put in really, really generous sums of money. And they're people who maybe have sent us messages as well saying like, look, I think this is really, really important. So that's really incredible. But we have a kind of an open secret, which is that with us, we're not following, as JJ was saying there, we're not following a model where what we want to do is make everybody pay for all of their content and put everything behind paywalls all the time. Because another thing that I really strongly believe, and I'd say JJ, you're the same, is that actually this quality of local journalism like this, that's for the community, should be accessible to everybody. I don't care if somebody doesn't have enough money and they still want to read the article. I want to enable them to do that. And I think that there's a kind of an unspoken understanding there amongst our pool of subscribers that they're not only funding us, but they're supporting the platform so that others can read it too. So at the moment, we only have one series that's going out to subscribers only, and anyone else. So people who are broke, and at the moment, I mean, we're on the cusp of a kind of a really interesting time when it comes to people's finances. We're going to see the austerity coming out of the COVID stuff. People are in a variety of different chaotic states. If I keep saying to people, if you want to read our articles, please just read our articles, share them. If you help us in other ways, help us to spread the word if you want to about what we're doing, but we're not tightly ring fencing. And we're kind of following a kind of a Radio Lab model with that, Radio Lab in New York. So they just say, look, support us. So we are essentially
like Wikipedia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or the Guardian. I see you're reading from Ireland.
Yeah. You have read 60 articles.
Is there any chance you'd throw us a few shekels to keep journalism free?
Yeah, that is what we're doing essentially, but it's working.
But like when you guys talk about doing it like a long form weekly, and is that just the two of you who are switching? And because that's, and these are long, well-researched pieces. So, there's a lot of work going into that. By the way, when I originally asked you what Tripe+Drisheen was, or what, I meant to then get a neat little definition of, and effectively we've done it along the way. Yeah. But if anyone is still with us right the way through this piece, Tripe+Drisheen is a weekly email long form piece on a particular topic. And then there are other aspects as well, where you've invited a series of people to share their visions of Cork for 2040. That's largely and loosely it. There are other little bits too as to what this is. Just thought I'd define it half an hour into the chat, like.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and can I just also just clarify that we're not, we're a lot more than that weekly piece. That essentially what we are is an independent local news substack for Cork City and County. That's what we call ourselves. So we throw in news stories as well when we get them. So our policy is with news. What we have at the moment is we have a lovely little thing called the Friday View, which is just a little kind of snapshot of things and events happening around the place. We have on Sunday, we have our Cork series, which we'll talk about hopefully again in a minute. And then Thursdays, we drop our long read, which is that very in-depth, very research thing. Yep. But we also put in news stories whenever we can. So we do them as they emerge. Like, because we're not following the herd and because we're not trying to cover stories that everybody else is covering, you'll see that there are quite a lot of stories that you won't see. You won't see us compete for clickbait. And, we haven't had a Wally the Walrus story. We're not covering these kinds of things because that's not our remit as far as we're concerned. What we're doing is we're looking where no one else is looking. That's what we're interested in doing. And then we find quite
or taking a harder look.
Yeah, or looking at it from a different angle, so like when the RoboTrees thing broke there, a couple of, obviously the fantastic news journalists working in Cork were on top of that story, but I had the time to go off and call the company, the company that was installing them, and go away and do this interview and just come at it from a totally different angle. So I think that sometimes what we're doing is we might not necessarily always be breaking something. Although, we've done articles about animal testing figures in UCC, JJ had fantastic ones there with, figures coming out around dereliction and whatnot. So, we are doing news reporting as well, but they're occasional and they come in as and when we're able to produce them. And then another thing that you were just talking about was you were asking, do we always do the long reads ourselves? We really are really silly with our money, because one of the first things we did is start commissioning other people to come and work with us. So yeah, JJ, you actually commissioned a fantastic long read there on Cork City Football Club.
Yeah, because all journalists will tell you, they have things that they're really good at covering, the issues and topics, and then there's a lot of blind spots. And our first long read that we commissioned was by freelancer Andrew Horgan, and he writes a lot about Cork City, just sports in general. and he wrote a piece on the demise, kind of the sudden and then kind of long decline of Cork City. Like, why has this, you know, why are they bottom almost of the first division now, and what's going to happen to them, you know? And yeah, we'd love to be able to do more and like commissioning of other journalists, because like it's a bit of a slog being a journalist. Ellie will tell you, I'll tell you, and like what we want is a fraternity or like of journalists. Like, we'd love to bring more pieces in, pieces in. And Ellie had a piece from a journalist based, is he in West Cork? Or it was all about the fishing industry in West Cork, you know, from the trawler's perspective. But it just costs money, because the other thing is like we want to pay people decent rates, like, because we've both been on the receiving end of like, it's tough out there getting money from people, like but like we don't want to go down that model either. So we want to pay journalists decent money, what we ideally would like to pay ourselves. So yeah, the more subscribers we get, like the more we're able to do, you know.
And when you the big supporters, the people who kind of believe in this, what are the sorts of things they say to you that they perceive this independent local journalism to be, and why they think it's important? I mean, we've covered some of those things, but what's some of the feedback that you get?
And I think this will, Ellie can take it up then, but one person in particular, a city centre businessman, and he said, like, I really believe in your goal of having more voices. And I think Ellie's nailed that with our Cork 2040 series of just getting people in there who wouldn't generally get a shot at mainstream journalism, or who wouldn't hear of maybe beyond kind of a small Twitter bubble, or they're not even on social media. So yeah, like people have said that like it's great to see new voices and other voices. And and Ellie is, how many people? I think we're on to installment 10. Are we, Ellie, for our Cork this weekend?
Yeah, we've done 9 so far. Yeah.
And I've fed off one or two of those. Was it Kevin Jordan or Kevin Corcoran or who?
Tom Jordan.
Who did, Tom Jordan. Trees, Please, which is a great name, and was a lovely piece. And I had him on air on that, and that's, I guess, what you guys do when you're putting that out there as well. It even maybe, I mean, I don't know where there's resistance in other publications or whatever, but I guess journalists are able to kind of go, listen, we're covering this because this is clearly a thing. Like, this is a thing. There's, I can see the stats that have been driven by it, the shares, the numbers. This is clearly a topic that is a hot spot. And so, for instance, the Examiner, to give them credit, they're doing a dereliction series, and we obviously, I'm seeing a lot of the Cork stuff, but where they were in Waterford, and it's the same story all over. Towns and villages devastated by empty buildings for 30, 40 years, and seemingly no vision or no will to transform them for the good of the communities in which they sit and affect. So I'm not necessarily saying that your piece has stimulated that, but in other words, you create a means for someone to go, it is a story, here is where it's existing, and here is where, so it helps to feed into all of that, I think.
I think
and so more power to you.
Another thing that we hear feedback wise a lot is we hear people who are really appreciating the slightly investigative tone that we take with things. So like, for example, so I had a piece there that went out a couple of months ago about the use of glyphosate, insecticide sprayed on the curbs. So I did freedom of information requests for that. That takes about a month to process all of that. And then you get back this huge dump of data. And then I made all of the data. So for one entire area of Cork County now, I've put online in that article, you can go and you can see the spraying program street by street. So that's just something that I decided to do. So I think that actually there are people out there who really like the kind of specialist information that they get out of our stuff. So I do quite a lot of freedom of information myself, and then try and feed that through wherever I possibly can as well. So I think that's feedback that we have, is that people really like the environmental stuff that we've been doing, and people really like the depth that we go into with that stuff. And then the other thing, I mean, like, okay, so let's go back to the dereliction one, and this is actually kind of funny. I'm going to say this, I'm going to get in trouble, but JJ's piece was a good couple of months before all the rest of this took off.
Well, I was kind of alluding to that. I didn't.
But
sorry, that's what I was trying to say too. That you guys almost helped to create the story, and then others can kind of go, look, it is a story. Let's cover it.
And we've had
Exactly.
the same with other
Absolutely.
stuff as well. I mean, you know, we've had other people pick up on things that we've definitely gotten to, not saying first, but in our own way first, because we're coming at it. So like I did a piece on the you know, I think I called it A City Rising Towards What? And it was the week that two
Yeah.
homeless men had died in Cork, and Micheál Martin was down announcing the Docklands development. And I wouldn't, in a traditional print publication, unless I had a column, I wouldn't have been able to connect those two things. But to me, they were very intimately connected. They were like, what kind of a city are we actually going to be building here? Are we building a city that looks after its vulnerable? Are we looking after, you know, the people who really need our help? Or are we trying to make some kind of fantasy glass shiny towers where there aren't any actually services for normal people? So then I was able to connect the Micheál Martin being in Cork to launch the Docklands with interviewing Katrina Toomey from Penny Tinners and trying to
Because there
unravel.
are all those interactions and interconnections.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that that's not the fault of the publications that are out there doing the really important work of telling us the news every day. It's just that there are constraints, there are time constraints, there are formatting constraints that we've freed ourselves from with this particular model. So it's just the independence is, I think, the part that people love the most, actually, you know.
And actually then you sometimes then give the freedom to others to go, why are you bothering so all this? Oh, well, we're just covering the story. you know, it almost gives a cover to maybe more mainstream media to kind of go, oh, we're not the aggravators. We just see the story over here. I mean, how can we not cover it? So more power and carry on and drive on. I'd have loaded.
Ellie mentioned it as well. Ellie mentioned the word depth, and like that's another thing we get from a lot of our the people who subscribe, because they can comment or they'll send, a lot of them send emails, and like they'll tell us about an article, and like as journalists we love that, good negative and positive feedback, because like, you know, you're only like, you want to get better all the time with each story, but they tell us, like, we give people the freedom to talk. Like the Benny McCabe piece, like he talked a lot and I included a lot of what he said, and like, I mean, it would be easy, just like, that's not really journalism either, if you just record someone and then transcribe it and put it all on the page. Like there's a bit of synthesis goes into it as well. But we do have, like, it goes back to that freedom. Like neither of us, Substack do have a cutoff point in terms of data for one email, but you can get a lot of mileage out of it. So we, like, there's a bit of an art to journalism, or there's craft as well. Like, so you have to be able to tell the story, and we both enjoy a good story. But like, yeah, we'll leave them talk, you know, and we'll put a lot of that down on print as well. They know they're talking to a journalist as well. It's not like we're doing anything underhanded, like, but yeah, we'll give people the room to talk and tell stories, you know.
Now, and your glyphosate one is a great example of, again, that sort of thing where you might walk around and be like, why is that happening? Or you might see the spraying happening, go, what? And how do you reach out? Who do you connect to say, why is this happening in our community? And you guys can go and kind of write that longer piece that gives you a lot of those answers, which might not actually bring satisfaction, but at least you go, okay. So you kind of get a better sense of, so this is what we need to tackle. So for instance, even in the, let's say the flood relief stuff, it's the Arterial Drainage Act from 1949 that arguably isn't fit for purpose anymore, or at least that's what a lot of people are suggesting. And you can now kind of say to the others and go, what is the story with this? Or when can we have the faceless bureaucrats come out and actually defend what they're doing and speak about what they're doing? Sometimes there's a sense of they're hidden in behind walls. Or there's another one that I have as a personal kind of a question that I wonder about, is just how local government works in Ireland, full stop.
Like,
and how we have, and again, I'm not attacking anyone here, but we have a manager of a city who doesn't answer to the people of the city. She in this case is not required to. But
I think,
does anyone in the city know who she answers to, or the name of it's the Minister for Local Government? Is it? Does anyone know who that is? Does anyone ever ask them?
I think you're speaking for a lot of people when you broadly say, like, how does local government work? How do councils work? And I think that's a big thing that we would like to explain more, both for ourselves and for everybody else, because yes, we all have councillors, and a lot of people might know who their councillors, and they might know it all, but like, how much power do councillors have as well? Like, and I think that is definitely like a job that me and Ellie need to do, and hopefully other journalists will too, is to explain, you know, the function and how local government works, so that we all have a much better idea of it. So if there is, you know, going to be a car park built on this public land, how does that happen? Why is it happening? Who do we contact? You know, like, how do the levers work here? And I think that is a failure of journalism, and this is like for all journalists, and not even just in Ireland, that we have to be better at explaining how our local democracies work, you know.
And it's about asking the questions, I guess, and the right questions, and even how Ireland compares in terms of how local government works. I mean, I've heard from the foundation of the state as a result of the turmoil in the Civil War, like power was concentrated deliberately and possibly with good reason at the time, for fear of, sort of breakaway mad areas that might take and maybe at that time it was useful, but might not be useful. It is very likely not useful anymore to have power concentrated so tightly in one area, and for local people to have so little influence over their local area. There's a big frustration around that right now. You see it in what people are concerned about and talking about and interested in. But yes, how power works and how it can be influenced, I guess. Maybe that's almost I don't know, is that almost a bit of a summary of or a little key into the sorts of stories that you guys delve into and what you're trying to uncover when you delve into them?
Absolutely. There's a very famous quote from an Israeli journalist called Amira Haas, who told Robert Frisk back in the day, he said, what's your job? And she said, my job is to monitor the centers of power. And that's very much in line with my understanding of what my job is. My job is to observe, and my job is to inform and to put on the record repeatedly the things that I see happening around me. That's all. It's not necessarily to campaign or to give out or to foment discontent or whatever. But if you do that job, so like, say, back to the glyphosate one again, because that was so interesting to me. That
for anyone wondering, that's the spraying of
Roundup, essentially. That's the spraying of herbicides along the roadways that you see the brown dead
running into all of the waterways, into the environment. There you go.
And the most interesting thing to me out of that article was not what I discovered, but what I couldn't discover. So what I discovered was that there isn't a policy. There is no policy. And that's what the problem is.
No one's actually asking the question.
Yeah. So, you see, again, like, I mean, there's a lot of, on social media, there are a lot of people who are just going like, oh, city council's terrible. Oh, and they're just, and they want to ban everything and stop everything. And, and that's understandable when you're frustrated with a particular area. But by balancing it out and talking to councillors as well, and, like by getting a handle on it, really what I came out of it with was like, okay, well, now I think I know what the problem is here. There isn't a policy.
Yeah, there you go.
Is.
That's what we need here is someone to.
So like if I wouldn't have had a newspaper platform to write an article about something that doesn't exist, because that's not news. That's the opposite of news, right?
Yeah.
If I pitched that to one of my frequent publications, I've discovered that there isn't something going on. Yeah. I would have been told, sorry, Ellie, we can't take a story.
Yeah, it's hard to know where that would live except in something like what you guys are doing.
Yeah, but I'm very proud that I have that there. That's on the record. That's archived on our website.
Accessible.
If anyone needs to read that, yeah, exactly. Anyone, somebody who works for a local authority. And I read the emails because in the Freedom of Information, I read all the email threads between the people from it working in the local authority and whatnot. That's all there now. And as far as I'm concerned, that is public service journalism. That's what I want to do,
And I agree with you too about balance being important and not all being, city council. I think Dean Venables, who I think has been commenting on the robo trees and adding a balance and saying, look, let's be aware that it's positive that the city council are attempting to make steps towards improving the air quality. Perhaps you might suggest that this aspect of it is a poor aspect of it, or a waste of money, or it's not going to achieve the goals. But they're moving in that way and they're working with people who have this. So let's reflect on that. And balance is important. But yes, it is asking those questions. And I suppose one thing I was just going to add in myself is just that aspect of, there are so many things in Ireland that no one seems to ever answer for. That like, who are the people? Like, somebody signed a contract, a person in a place said, yes, let's do this. And the results happened and nobody ever seems to ever, and it's not that you want to drag them through the streets and fire rotten vegetable at them, but that people have a greater sense of, if I'm responsible for this and I'll be held to be responsible for this, I might make a different decision. I might be less beholden to the people who are influencing me in different ways and say, but my name's on this at the end. So if you guys can continue doing that thing where you're uncovering, or at least making the people who rarely have to answer for what they do because they're hidden in behind walls a little bit more scared to do what they do, knowing that they're going to be, knowing that it's going to be investigated and looked at. The OPW flood relief is one. Who makes these decisions? What are they basing these decisions on? How do we ever get to ask them about these decisions? Maybe they have an annual report that goes to a minister and they say it's all above board, it's all publicly available, but does that really work for the citizen?
And wouldn't it be amazing if we had such a grown-up, because Ireland is like a teenage state, I always think. It's like we're still hiding in our bedrooms. We have a big neo or colonial hangover. Nobody likes accountability. Everybody is very scared to put their hand up and go, I think I did something wrong here. Should I have done this differently? Which in a mature state, that's what you find. People say like, oh, great, now we can troubleshoot and find out what happened here. But in Ireland, we have this like, nobody sticks their head above the parapet. The protectionism within organizations and structures is something phenomenal to behold. I mean, like I encounter it a lot of the time, and it's like, guys, just somebody say that they're
up here.
You're the person who did the thing, like that's fine, that's okay, we'll take it from there. But we don't have any sense of that in this country whatsoever. Like, imagine if the OPW minister could turn around and go, you know what, the OPW shouldn't actually be in charge of flood relief. Like if he could go, I shouldn't be having to defend this thing that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This is not something, we're about built heritage. These are ecosystems. We need to form a new organization that is about this thing, which is an ecosystem thing. And we'll go back to looking after the public monuments and public buildings, and we'll do that to the best of our ability. We're never going to have that level of political accountability unless we really change things. And fear is not the answer, because when you scare people, you make it worse. And that's the very difficult balancing act, is that you're trying to go in and you're trying to get that accountability, but you're not trying to make people scared that their job is on the line or whatever. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody is just working away. Yes. And there's so many fantastic people working in local authority.
People are genuinely well-intentioned and are not trying to do a bad job or make mistakes. And perhaps, yes, it's also about maybe also easing the sense perhaps of the state or the semi-state to say, like, if we've made a mistake, we should be able to fess up and correct it. But there's a lot of the time, I get a sense there's a lot of doubling down on mistakes. We can't admit it because we'll be hammered. So we carry on for 30 years, not admitting the mistake, continuing the same course, and unable to reverse and back out. So, maybe we as a public maybe need to get a little bit softer and say, we want people to fess up and own up to mistakes and allow them to correct it without maybe sticking them in the stocks.
Yeah, maybe
I think as well, like
go on.
So, can you hear me, guys? Sorry, no, my internet. It's I think, like, from talking to people around the city on a lot of the stories that we've been reporting on as well, and maybe Ellie was talking about with accountability is enforcement. Like, there's a lot of frustration that we have policies that are not enforced, whether it be on dereliction or on street parking, or just like so many different issues, or you can just throw your car in this bicycle lane, or you don't have to pick up after your dog. And I mean, again, this is not like, it's always a minority, but it does, like, or the
we don't put out bins because people misuse them.
Exactly, or we'll take away benches because they are the problem, the benches. Like, and it's just a lot of people are frustrated because there are steps being taken, but also, like, there are steps not being taken. If you are going to have a ban on cars going down Patrick Street, then enforce it, and, like, people will learn then that you can't go down. But, like, if it's a kind of a poorly implemented, or it's half-witted or whatever, or half-arsed, like, it's just you have this good idea, but was it a good idea in a presentation or to make us look like we are a city that are, like, comparable to another city in X, Y, and Z? And,
or
like,
is it also about in sometimes balancing the pressure that you're receiving from a sector that's saying, if you do this, you're going to materially affect us and we pay your rates, which I can understand. But you end up with a half measure that doesn't work for anybody.
Unfortunately, And there is frustration around that, and you'll hear a lot of people that, like, in our reporting, that will talk about that, like, we can do it, why aren't we doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's all one aspect of what we do, is like all of this stuff with city and county council and all of those things. But then the other thing, like, that I just really, really want to talk about is the Our Cork 2040 series, because that's a real, like, it's a trip.
Opportunity.
But it's an incredible thing to be doing,
Yeah.
because we decided we were going to use a lot of the subscription sign-up money to commission non-professional writers from a variety of different walks of life, right? And so the thinking behind that was, you know, the Cork development plan is due in October, I think, is the closing submission date for that. We have this all Ireland development plan running up until 2040 that says Cork is going to double in size. And there's a lot of concerns around what that's actually going to mean, what types of services there's going to be. So our idea is that by getting people who don't normally, you know, they're not people that you're ever going to see in a paper, unless maybe they're being interviewed or something like that, but that their own perspective on what they need and what they want and their hopes for the future and the challenges that they face. We've had people with, you know, with disabilities and, you know, people who have a specific range of challenges in the city. And that we wanted to just translate that to the public. So then we're editing that. So we're getting in a wide variety of different styles of writing and stuff like that. And we're trying to keep that the authentic voice, but still put some structure on it to make it a readable thing. And then we're paying all of those people to produce that work as well. So we're, as JJ said, we've done our 9th, we're moving on to 10, and we're going to run that series up until the closure of the submissions for the development plan. And then hopefully we're going to start having events, live events and think-ins and discussions after that point with the people that have contributed to that series.
Right. Will you do anything online? Will you, you know, like in the format like this? Sorry, anything online? Obviously your whole delivery is online. I meant in maybe the more spoken side of things.
We're hoping to actually have things in real life.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Are we not all so sick of Zoom at this stage? I mean, like, what?
I meant more sort of like, I suppose, where it's spoken more so than written.
Okay. Well, we have a few ideas, and we need to just get working on them. But hopefully, we'll be back to you in the next soon enough to let you know about stuff that we're planning for this side of Christmas.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure for me to chat with you guys, JJ O'Donoghue, Ellie O'Byrne, who are the co-founders, co-owners. I don't know how to, but Tripe+Drisheen is your, and presumably then, why don't we just finish up very briefly with what do you know what your vision of Cork in people's vision of Cork in 2040? No, maybe I won't go 2040, but what would be your, if you were able to wave your magic wand and it could be what you wanted to be, what would Tripe+Drisheen be in 2 years' time?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
Finally pulled out a good question.
Finally a good question.
An hour. I don't know, like you were saying about how the mill in Manchester is expanded now and it has a team. What's that? What are those steps that you, if it kind of worked out, that you sort of see this becoming?
I suppose, like, whether it's a dream or a fantasy, like ideally I'd love to be doing this full time, because like we're trying to juggle a lot of balls to get this out every week, and like to be able to dedicate our full attention and full time to this, like 24/7, would be amazing. And that would also be because of, like, we have enough subscribers and readers saying we want more of this. And like we're both like to give our age, we're both in our 40s. It'd be great. Like Cork doesn't really have a journalism school or a media center. Like for journalists returning here, like to be able to bring them on board, because like I don't see myself at all as a mentor. If anything, I could learn from them. But like to be able to build up a team of journalists doing what we do would be absolutely stunning. And who knows, we've started down that road. Ellie?
Yeah, I second that. I would love to see Tripe+Drisheen grow to a stage where we are able to take on maybe 1 or 2 people to work for us, actually employ a couple of staff. I would be very ambitious when it comes to particularly paying photographers and doing beautiful photo spreads, because photographers are chronically underpaid at the moment unless you're on staff. Freelance photography is terrible, like, for people at the moment. So something that is sustainable, that has a pool of subscribers, that means that we can put out, I would like to be able to put out daily content instead of 4 times a week content. I would like to be able to do more news reporting, and I would like to be able to you know, commission series. And I'm discovering that I really like editing as well, and I really love, because I lecture in media as well, so I love that process of the communication and trying to foster something good with people. And I think that we could really build something that is providing a great public service for people, that stays advertising free and stays totally independent, and is able to employ another couple of people as well. That's where I'd love to be at in 2 years' time, for sure.
TripeDrisheen, Abu, thank you for your time. You gave me a lot of it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Dave.